May 2nd Planning Commission meeting to order. Could you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could I please have a roll call?
Commissioner Harper Pedersen.
Present.
Commissioner Marsters.
Present.
Commissioner Silberman.
Here.
Vice Chair Bergman.
Present.
Chair Gutierrez.
Present. Public comment. Public comment is limited to items not on the agenda. The Commission may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed as allowed under the Brown Act. However, the Commission's general policy is to refer items to staff for attention or have a matter placed on a future Commission's agenda for a more comprehensive action or report. Is there anybody here to speak on an item that's not on the agenda? Please.
Good evening. My name is Christian Vesha. I wanted to come to this meeting because I'm, as a resident of San Carlos, very interested in an issue that I understand the Planning Commission has taken up recently, which is looking at the current zoning ordinance as it concerns house size in the city. We were personally very affected when what seems to me and many of my neighbors to be an excessively large house was put up down the street. And we went through the process of showing up at RDRC, going through that, and since it was compliant with the numeric aspect of the code, perhaps not others, but the numeric side of things around zoning ordinances and setback, there was really no recourse. And I would add that we looked into the process of potentially appealing it because it seemed that there were aspects of the zoning ordinance that gave residents recourse to pursue something with respect to size, massing, architectural consistency, and so forth. And one of the things I learned was that the appeal process in San Carlos, I think, is financially out of reach for most people. I've spent quite a bit of time back then to gather comparative zoning ordinance data across 6 mid-peninsula cities. I'm in the process of finalizing some calculations to see what the collective outcome is when you apply those rules to say, well, how large a house can you build on a given lot size? I think the data is something that should be of interest to the Planning Commission and to the City Council. I should have it very soon, and I'll look forward to sharing that with you. I wanted to introduce myself because I've kind of taken up this as an issue because I care about really the direction our city's going and whether it's someplace I want to continue to live 20 years from now. And I think this issue is central to answering that question. So I am trying to organize concerned residents, of which I think there are quite a few. In mid-March, I posted what I called an open letter to the residents of San Carlos concerning residential overbuilding. And there's been over 100 replies on that thread, and many thanks of a lot of people who are stepping up to say, this concerns me too, what can we do about it? So I am trying to organize the residents who share this concern to have a voice. One of my question here right now, because my time is probably wrapping up, is just to say, I know David has been good about communicating with me via Nextdoor. Jesse, I got information from you, so thank you for the people who have responded to me via email. But the question is 2 weeks from today the date that the Planning Commission will be presenting on a report of lot size and house size and lot splitting in San Carlos?
That's a question for staff.
Through the chair, if you would like me to respond.
Absolutely.
And I was going to provide an update at the end of our agenda, so I'm glad you brought it now. That way you don't have to stay for the whole meeting unless, of course, you'd like to, and you're welcome to. Yes, we have received, obviously, interest from the Planning Commission, both the Planning Commission and the City Council, so staff, my department has been directed to do an evaluation, so I'd be very much interested to, get the value of all the research that you've done as well. At this point, we're targeting May 16th, and I'll probably be able to confirm that with one of my commissioners who's asked me, because they're getting a lot of, inquiry from the public, such as yourself. So if it doesn't go May 16th, it will go June 6th.
Okay, and by when will you know whether or not the May 16th will be a good date for that meeting?
Tomorrow.
Okay, excellent. I think I can find your email on the website. I will shoot you a note. David, you've been very helpful in monitoring this and communicating to me, so thank you for that. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Christian. Anybody else for public comment? Great, we're going to move along to approval of minutes. Anybody see any, this is March 21st minutes, anybody see any corrections needed? If not,
I didn't see anything.
I didn't see anything.
Move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Harper Pedersen?
Yes.
Commissioner Marsters?
Yes.
Commissioner Silverman?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bergman?
Yes.
Chair Gutierrez?
Yes. Moving along to the public hearing. Procedure for public hearing. Staff will present a report on the history, physical features, etc. on the application, followed with the staff's recommendation. The applicant will make a presentation. Thereafter, interested members of the community may speak on the proposal. When all interested parties have had an opportunity to be heard, the hearing will be closed and no further discussion from the floor can be held. The commission will then consider the evidence and make its recommendation. If you challenge a public hearing item in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing described in this notice, the public notice, or in a written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to the public hearing. Speaker should fill out a speaker's form found by the door and hand it to the recording secretary prior to addressing the commission. The speaker should come up to the microphone to speak since the meeting is being recorded. This will assist staff in preparing minutes. And the only item on the agenda today is 1390 El Camino, APN 051-136-060, consideration of a conditional use permit amendment for 3 new wireless antennas co-located on the roof of an existing building with associated equipment and relocating the 6 existing antennas with the same area to make room for the 3 new antennas. You would think they could do a better wording on that whole thing, but that's the first and only item. So, staff.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Andrea Martisich, and I'll be presenting this item this evening. The applicant is requesting modification of a conditional use permit to add 3 antennas to an existing cell facility at 1390 El Camino Real. The proposal also includes the installation of associated equipment along with those antennas and relocating these 6 existing antennas to make room for the 3 antennas, and I'll show a diagram of that in 1 minute. These are the existing conditions at the site. As you can see, this is an office building at the corner of El Camino Real and Belmont Avenue. The site is zoned mixed use South Boulevard. And because the proposal involves adding antennas to a site that's within 600 feet of a residential district, and because a previous conditional use permit was granted for this site, a conditional use permit amendment is required. And if you approve it, that is in the form of a new use permit, which is the attachment that you had in your packets. This is an aerial view of the site, and in red is clouded. You can see the walls of the screening feature, and the antennas are located, the current antennas and future antennas would be located within that screened area. So I just did a chart to explain what antennas are there and what is proposed. In 2007, T-Mobile received a CUP to allow 8 antennas on the roof of the building. All 8 are still on the roof, however, only 6 of those are operational. The other 2 are not being used at this time. The 6 antennas that are operational are split into 3 groups or sectors, and within each of those sectors, there's 2 antennas. And so that's what's existing now on site. The applicant is now proposing 1 additional antenna in each of those 3 areas for a total of 3 new antennas and 9 antennas total after the proposal. Staff has added a condition that those 2 antennas that are not in use be removed for aesthetic purposes, but also because the RF study does not take these into account. If the applicant would like to keep those antennas, we added a condition that they conduct a new RF study analyzing the 9 antennas plus the 2 were they to come back online at some point. This is just a blown-up version of the roof plan. The areas that are shaded in the beige are the 3 areas where the 6 existing operational antennas are located and where the 3 new antennas are proposed to be added. The blue clouded area are the 2 panel antennas that staff is recommending removal of. And this is zooming in a little bit closer and is just a typical drawing of what's proposed to happen. The two antennas, which are white on the left side, one will be shifted to make room for the new antenna, which is gray on the right side. So just showing that the antennas will move along the support that they're currently on to make room for the new ones. As I mentioned in the beginning, there's also additional equipment proposed, such as our RRU units, and then the fiber and cables associated with installation of the antennas. The existing structure is screened, as I mentioned, by that fiberglass wall here, and that is proposed to remain. In terms of compliance with the municipal code and the zoning, the maximum allowed height is 50 feet. It is consistent with what is allowed in that zoning district. The proposed antennas will be at a 50-foot height, and again, behind the screen, so no change in height from existing. They're required to have a 6-foot setback from the building edge. The closest antenna is 17 feet, 1 inch back from the building edge. In terms of design, they meet the first design preference of the municipal code, which is to have antennas that are completely screened. And so in this case, they do meet that requirement. And in terms of location, they meet the second location preference, which is to have antennas located within a non-residential district and also co-located with existing conforming facilities. So it does meet that requirement as well. In terms of the RF report, which measures the electromagnetic emissions, the report noted that there's no areas on the ground which exceed the FCC limits for the general population or for occupational exposure. The report does show, however, on the roof that the the readings are 753% of the allowable public level and 150% of the occupational levels. Per the report provided, upon installation of barriers which prohibit the public from accessing the roof, alert signs, and restricting access to authorized personnel who have been trained in RF emissions, the site would be in compliance with FCC standards. The applicant is here to speak and has also brought someone who can speak more to how that's measured and what happens when the numbers are higher than 100%, so to speak. And I wanted to add one more thing. If approved, those barriers and all the recommendations from the report were included as conditions in the approval document itself. And then one additional change to a condition that we're recommending, condition 10. In the red, we're recommending to the end of it adding that RF levels shall comply with FCC regulations at all times. The applicant is required to show that now and also 45 days after operation, but just as an extra safeguard to have that in there for any future changes. The item was noticed in the newspaper as well as sent to property owners within 300 feet. No comments or inquiries have been received to date for this item. This is the motion you would make. I did include the modified condition number 10 if you choose to change that as part of the motion. And as I mentioned, the applicant is available and also has someone who can speak on the RF emissions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions for Andrea right now? Okay. I'm sure we have some questions for the applicant, so if you guys want to maybe get up and...
Hi, good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ashley Woods, and I'm here on behalf of T-Mobile. And I'd like to thank Andrea for her presentation. I don't have any more details to add to that, but T-Mobile does agree with the staff report and the recommendation for approval. Also here this evening is my colleague Josh, who can speak a little bit more about EME. Thank you.
Thank you. Somebody want to open up with questions? Or I can... Probably the most glaring question is to, can we go back a couple slides when it comes to the percentages? So can you explain, I know it's been a while since we've heard an application, and every time we hear an application we learn a little bit more, but that 753% is probably one of the highest I think I've seen. So can you kind of go over how that works? And
certainly. Effectively, that percentage is a representation if you were to be directly in front of the antennas. And there's various levels of mitigation to restrict not just the public, but also working professionals from being in that area, starting with the access to the building itself. It's we have lock boxes. Only T-Mobile professionals have the combinations to those, and then signage from all access points, including the roof access before you go through the roof hatch, which is also deadbolted. There's signage there as well. Once you gain access to the roof, what we are proposing is to put up barriers around the highest radiating areas, and then there will also be signage throughout the rooftops. So the protocol is if somebody needs to be on the roof to perform work, there's a number they call. The request is made to turn down the site. Once the site is turned down, it's effectively no longer radiating, and then whomever needs to perform their scope of work can safely do so.
Why don't you test on the top floor of the building, not the roof, but like actually where people are going to be on the top floor?
We can if requested.
Well, I mean,
but
where
generally,
does the radiation go?
well, generally speaking, concrete and steel, they tend to absorb and/or bounce the signals. So it's not as great of a hazard
Is
as.
the roof made of concrete?
Honestly, I don't know the composition of this roof.
That was one of my questions also is.
I refuse to accept that I would ask the same question that Scott was going to ask.
Yeah.
I
Well,
object.
the inside of the building, that top floor, I mean, if all it is wood and tar and, I'm worried that the inside may have unacceptable levels, okay? And so that's something I would like to see numbers for before sort of approving this. The other question that I had was it looked to me like 3 of the antennas were outside sort of that hexagon area that was on there.
It did look like that on one of the diagrams. I was assuming there was an explanation for that.
Yeah, and so can you explain why 3 of the, so
One's
at the top?
The 3 inside the square.
the 3 at the top there.
Those are. It's also within FRP, fiberglass.
Okay, so it is within a sort of a square fiberglass area.
It is. It has its
Okay.
own paneling enclosure.
Okay, it was described as everything was inside that area there, so I was just curious as to what that one was there. But really, my big issue is the top floor, and are the levels acceptable, especially in light of the fact that you're at
53%.
53% right in that area, and while there's shielding around that, I don't know, and maybe you have the answer, what is the dampening rate through various materials, and what is the roof made of, so that we know that we're not approving something that's going to be harmful to the individuals who are working in that building.
I think there's a children's dentist in there.
On the bottom floor. On the bottom floor, yeah, I think you're right.
I'm sure that as it goes through layers of that it's dampened, but I don't
You just
know.
wanna see the number.
Yeah,
I
none of
just
us
want
are
to see the
experts in
number
that.
on the
And
on the
also,
top floor, especially.
Also keeping in mind, and I completely understand what you're asking for, the antennas are radiating out. If they were turned down, then that pattern would be.
We've heard that before, and I believe you. It's just the number is so darn
No,
high.
I believe-
And
I
I'm
understand.
gonna Google what 753% does to someone. I'm thinking something like Raiders of the Lost Ark, but I don't know yet.
Not quite, but
I'm glad to hear it.
I mean, that's my concern.
I unfortunately share that concern.
Well, that number did jump out at me. That's why I brought it up.
I have a different question. Maybe this is more appropriate for staff. I'm curious, we usually have this as a condition, and it's in condition 9 and 10. The results of the sound studies done within 45 days of operations, have those been routinely occurring with other antennas we've been approving, and have there been any problems with those sound studies?
We're not finding any problems with those.
But they are actually doing them. It's not something we're just
They turn
putting
them in.
Okay.
Oh, yes, they do turn them in. And in fact, we were working with another provider just recently to make sure that they submitted those follow-up evaluations.
And then my second question, it looked like, according to the map, there are 10 other T-Mobile sites in San Carlos. Have we had any compliance problems with any of the other T-Mobile sites?
No, nothing that planning has been receiving.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
We on the 30-day clock on this?
We have the FCC statutory timeline. Are we
Right, the shot clock rule.
So yes, there's the shot clock rule issue to be concerned about. The recommendation from our office for the Planning Commission tonight is for some decision to be made so that the city is not at risk of having the application deemed approved without any conditions attached. So the options before the Planning Commission tonight would be to deny the application, to approve the application, or to approve with
Additional
conditions.
Hey,
That's
we could
correct.
do that. We could do that. I could come up with a condition.
Yeah, David loves.
I could do that.
So I'm going to open it up to anybody. Did anybody else want to speak on this matter? No? Okay. No? Okay. Any other questions?
Do you know whether you're going to? Are you willing to commit today to removing those 2 antennas?
Well, it's
I can't commit today, but I don't see a problem with removing the other 2
No,
antennas.
it's fine. It's simpler just to have it as a condition or remove rather than to have you come back. But anyway, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's not going to affect anything.
okay. More questions? Go for it.
I don't think, I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Harper Pedersen?
Yes.
Commissioner Marsters?
Yes.
Commissioner Silverman?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bergman?
Yes.
Chair Gutierrez?
Yes. David?
I still need the regular motion. I could find it. Well, actually, no, there's a modification to it. It wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
Now it is. Where's modified condition 10? Can I see it real quick? Was this supposed to address the issue of the potential of them reoperating the other 2? I thought this was designed to deal with the potential operation of the 2 currently non-functioning antennas.
That was condition 3.
That's condition number 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I have the motion back? I move that the Planning Commission approve T-Mobile's request for a conditional use permit with modified condition number 10 for installation of 3 new antennas with associated equipment at an existing facility and relocation of 6 antennas within the same area at 1390 El Camino Real, APN 051-136-060, based on the required findings and for the reasons incorporated in the staff report, with the addition of condition 24, which is that the applicant conduct an RF study on the highest occupied floor of the building that demonstrates that there is less than 100% of FCC allowed radiation on that floor.
Second.
Okay. So my question is that what we should be expecting, is less than 100%? or should it be lower than
The
that?
residential limit.
100% is what? 100% is
Of the residential limit, right?
Residential
There's
limit?
two different readings. There's
Right.
occupational and residential.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think
And I should have specified residential. That residential is lower, I assume.
Through the chair, it's the general public has a much lower threshold than the occupational. So the general public reading is what you'd want.
That's what I intended, and I assume the motion will reflect that. Okay.
And there was a second from Scott? Or
From me.
Angela. Any more discussion on it? Could I have a roll call vote on that, please?
Commissioner Harper Pedersen,
yes.
Commissioner Marsters,
Yes.
Commissioner Silberman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bergman,
Yes.
Chair Gutierrez.
Yes. Thank you. Moving along, reports, correspondence, and general information. Report on recent city council actions.
Staff has no news in regards to city council actions recently taken.
Planning Commission comments or reports.
So I actually have a question. I was walking around the east side and along the East Side Connect project, and I noticed that there's a lot of plants that have died in the planters that are along the roads. Who's responsible for those?
I would imagine it would be the city, but I would have to confirm that with the Public Works Director. I can certainly convey to him what you're finding out there and bring a response back to the commission.
Okay, I mean, there were just whole sections of places where the plants had died, and I just was curious whether they were ever going to be replanted or not.
I know the code identifies certain street segments meeting certain characteristics that are responsibility of the city versus, as we know, residential sidewalk areas and plantings within the sidewalk area are responsible of the homeowners, but I can confirm what the situation is for East Side Connect.
Yeah, these seem to be on the street side of the sidewalk, so they're actually out in the street. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I know we are focusing on the lot split and zoning considerations right now with study sessions coming up, but I wanted to make sure that we didn't lose focus on the fact that we requested some kind of report or status on affordable housing and what's being done with the impact fees and that type of thing. I just wanted to bring that up one more time.
Yeah, thank you. Staff is, that's one of the other items we have on our list to bring back. But thank you.
Anyone else? Correspondence, I don't think there was any. Planning staff comments, reports, and updates of current projects.
Yes, so for our May 16th agenda, I always like to provide a little preview of what's on the agenda and items that have been continued and the likelihood of them returning. So as you might recall, we continued to a date certain the two new homes associated with 2115 White Oak Way. You may recall that the Planning Commission approved the lot split. There were no appeals, so the applicant has been working with the neighbors, and I believe they are working very hard to meet the date of May 16th. It was continued to a date certain, and May 16th was the date that was identified. And if that's not going to happen, we'll know within the next few days. But at this point, it's my understanding they're going to meet that, and they'll be able to bring that back to the Planning Commission. Another item that was continued and has and will undergo additional noticing. This one was continued to a date uncertain. Is 520 El Camino Real, the mixed-use project located on the vacant lot that's right next to the Shell gas station on Holly and El Camino Real. The applicant has been working hard, and you'll see a very different design, but it looks like that's close, and that will likely come back on May 16th. The other item that staff will bring to the commission, and will likely place it as a consent item. Certainly if the planning commission, anyone wants to pull it and discuss it, we can do that. But this is the typical requirement to make a general plan consistency finding with the city's proposed capital improvement plan. As you recall, it's this time of year is the new 2-year budget cycle, so the CIP has been updated, and we'll be bringing that to the Planning Commission on May 16th. This needs to come forward, so we'll make sure that we have Public Works staff available if somebody decides, you would like to discuss anything. But if not, it's typically routine, and I'll be placing it as a consent item. And just another announcement, I think I announced this before, but the Planning Commission will have a recess on August 1st and August 15th, consistent with the council recess, although theirs starts a little bit earlier. And that's all I have.
So those 3 items are all for May 16th?
That's correct. Oh, the one additional item that we may be bringing is the lot split bulk and mass study. If we can, make sure that we can get that done and it's, thorough. We want to make sure we do a really good job, that it's all encompassing, because I know this has been an item that a lot of people have brought up. It's an interest by this commission as well as the city council. If it doesn't come forward on May 16th, we'll be bringing that on June 6th.
Okay, thank you. Meeting adjourned.